John and Ken Show. John Cobell and Ken Champeau, KFI, AM 640, more stimulating talk radio. You know, it's a peculiar few years when it comes to amnesty and immigration, because Obama ran hard twice on promising amnesty, but he didn't actually do anything. And curiously, they've been promoting their administration as being fiercely pro-deportation. Claiming to have deported huge numbers of illegal aliens.
To set us up for an amnesty bill, they wanted to say that we're doing more when it comes to deporting illegal immigrants that many past administrations have done. And they even got what they wanted, in effect, when some of the immigration activist groups called Obama the deporter-in-chief. And now we're skeptical here at the John and Ken Show, so we were waiting for a report to delve deeper into the actual numbers concerning the actions of immigrations and customs enforcement.
The numbers that any administration claim are really impossible to prove. You got a 2,000-mile border, and you have all these weird categories and classifications of illegal immigrants. And so they'll make a claim that, we've deported over 1 million people this year. It's like, well, how do you prove that? How do we know? Because every number is politically motivated, and every number seems to go through some kind of blender, and it comes out randomly. I really don't know what to believe. Well, we're going to talk now with Jessica Vaughn.
Jessica is the Director of Policy Studies at the Center for Immigration Studies. We've had guests from that organization on our show many times before, and she has put out a report which has delved deeper into these numbers to give us more detail on what's really going on. Jessica, welcome to the John and Ken Show.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
So is Obama the great deporter?
Well, instead of deporter-in-chief, I think it might be more accurate, based on the report that I just put out, to call him the releaser-in-chief. Because as it turns out, under his administration, and particularly in the last couple of years, ICE has actually been walking away from more deportation cases than they have actually been pursuing. In fact, last year, I was able to determine, using some internal documents that don't typically get released, that they ignored about 3/4 of the cases that they had as leads, and only tried to deport about 1/4 of those individuals, less than 200,000 from the interior.
These are people who already came across the border and have settled here in some way.
These are people who've been living in the United States, and in most cases they were referred to ICE because they got arrested for something in their community, and the information was passed on to ICE by local police or sheriffs or through the Secure Communities program. That's how they find out about most of these people. So that's one important thing to keep in mind when we're talking about who they're letting go. And as it turns out, we estimate, based on ICE records, that about 68,000 of these people who were released have criminal records and convictions.
How serious?
Well, we don't know, because ICE believes that illegal aliens have privacy rights.
Really?
So, yes, so they will not release information about specific cases and what their immigration record is and what their crimes were. I have submitted a Freedom of Information request asking them to specify all of just give me,
the
most
categories.
Serious criminal conviction for each one of these people. And, I don't know if I'll ever get a response, but
we were told that the Obama policy was going to be, we're only going to focus on the serious criminals for deportation when we arrest them for something, if it's a serious crime. Now, you're telling us that 68,000 who had criminal convictions were not deported. I got to wonder, we've got to know what the categories of crime that these people committed were.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, and they were not released because they were minor criminals. We know that some of them had to have been serious criminals. They're released, according to ICE personnel, they're released because of these prosecutorial discretion policies in which administration officials have basically told ICE agents you're not allowed to deport certain kinds of people, and they allow family relationships, For example, if you have a child here who's a U.S. citizen or some other relative, if you are a parent or a caregiver, these factors can trump your criminal convictions in terms of whether or not you're going to get deported.
So they're not
and they
only getting
also
a
don't
pass.
count certain crimes as crimes. Like, DUI is not considered a serious crime by them.
Really?
Yes. You have to have like 3 of them before that makes you deportable.
Wow.
So a DUI is 1/3 of a serious crime.
Right. Regardless of whether somebody died as a result of that.
Really? Really? Even if it's a DUI involving a death?
It would have to, occasionally these cases do get a lot of public attention, so ICE may react to that. But as a routine matter, generally these cases do not bring them to the top of the list. I mean, it's true that ICE is focused primarily on very serious criminals in its deportation numbers, and they say they're focused on the worst of the worst, but that is leaving a lot of the worst still living here.
Yeah.
So,
All right. But
the worst of the worst means the worst is still here. Exactly.
Aren't those guys in prison?
not all of them, no, because they only have a certain amount of money to spend on detention space, and every single year the president has asked Congress to cut back the amount of detention space. This is what is so interesting, because they claim that they don't have the resources to focus on deporting more people, and yet they continuously ask for those resources to be cut back. And they're also not using the resources that are provided by Congress for interior enforcement to do interior enforcement. I know this will shock you, but they've actually decided that in order to claim record deportations, what they started doing was having the Border Patrol turn over people that they arrested crossing the border illegally, turn them over to ICE, keep them in an ICE detention center for about 12 hours, and bus them over to another part of the border and return them. And then Border Patrol gets to count it as an apprehension, and ICE gets to count it as a removal.
And that, was not the case under previous administrations.
No, they've changed. What they've done is they've changed the definition of deportation. Most people, when they think of deportation, it's sending people who are living here back to their home country. You don't think of deportation as, some guy
caught at the border, never
caught
really
at the
got
border,
in. Yeah.
spent 12 hours on a bunk, and now he's being sent back home. That is not a deportation.
It is very misleading, and they have not been forthcoming about this until very recently, and they're still not forthcoming about it all the time. I mean, ICE had the audacity, today, actually, to tell Fox News Radio that they had still deported record numbers of criminals, but they neglect to mention that half of those are Border Patrol cases, and so they really shouldn't be counting those.
Well,
even the Secretary of Homeland Security admitted this before the House Appropriations Committee a couple of weeks ago.
The amnesty groups that are angry with Obama, should they be angry, or have they been fooled?
Well, they don't want anyone deported. They're quite clear about that.
They want zero, yeah.
So
right,
even
but
the
I mean,
they'll say, but no, this whole campaign of not one more deportation, the deporter in chief, stop breaking up families. This is really is built on a myth of enforcement that is bears no resemblance to the reality of what is going on.
So the activist groups have been believing the bogus numbers, and that's what's fueling their protests.
I'm not sure if they believe it or they're just willingly participating in political theater to try to convince Congress and the public that it's time to stop the deportations and move on to the mass amnesty.
All right, Jessica, thank you for that excellent report. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, Jessica Vaughn, she's with the Center for Immigration Studies, Director of Policy Studies, and they have put out a report, and I think the number, John, that was making news a few weeks ago is that the Obama administration, since he's been president, has deported 2 million people.
Yeah, that's a number I remember.
As you just heard, that's fiction for the most part, because they're counting something that previous administrations did not count, and those are what we call the fresh illegal immigrants, the ones that get caught by Border Patrol and they're held in detention for a few hours and then sent back on a bus or something.
Once again, don't believe the cheap headlines, the cheap sound bites.
Yeah.
Those 20-second stories that run.
And remember, what we also learned from Jessica is they're only deporting the worst of the worst, the criminal illegal aliens, those who are not just in this country illegally but have committed criminal acts, but they're leaving the worst, some serious offenses like DUIs. They're not deporting them.
Yeah, even if the DUI guy runs over and kills somebody.
All right, more coming up, and we're also keeping an eye on that earthquake in Chile with the tsunami warning.